Hi everyone, Rachel Jensen here, broker owner of Luna Realty Belize on the beautiful island of Ambergris Caye. Today we are at a very special location. As you can see behind me, we have a beautiful backdrop. We are here at Secret Beach. This is a really exquisite location on the west side of the island. The project that we're specifically at today is Turquoise Seas. But I wanted to introduce somebody very special here who's sitting next to me, Peter Garian, owner of Secret Beach Homes. And the reason that I invited him on today is because I know that many of you are looking to build your property here in Belize. And at Luna Realty Belize, we are big believers in educating and making sure that you're connected to the right people. And Peter and I actually got connected in 2021, and then again, was it 2022, 23-ish, when we first, when we began working on projects together. And I was coming in from the sales and marketing side, and then Peter was coming in from like this fixer side, right? Because there are a lot of projects that get started here with the wrong contractors. And you know, there is a saying I remember from one of my old bosses, he would always say, you don't know what you don't know. And when you're coming into a foreign country as a foreigner and you're not really sure where to get started, I know there's all these forums on Facebook and people asking for advice and people are giving advice, but sometimes it's like representatives for the company, like you don't really know who to trust. And so Peter and I got connected while working on these projects, and Peter was always coming in and just kind of fixing all of the mistakes that previous contractors made. So the reason for doing this video is, one, to let you know there's a great fixer here in case you're in that situation, but number two, hopefully you don't get to that position of needing to find somebody to help fix past mistakes. And so if you are somebody who's looking to build here, Peter is someone that I would highly recommend, but I'm gonna let Peter tell his story a little bit. Peter, how did you end up here? What inspired you to come to Belize? And then overall, what is the business that you have here in Secret Beach and then Belize, Ambergris generally?
Sure, yeah, thank you, Rachel. Appreciate you having me here.
Of course.
So like you said, we first met in 2021. I came down in a conference and ended up purchasing my first bit of land here in Belize, as many do, and have really been off to the races ever since, right? So we started buying more land, then we started building and getting involved with the construction down here and understanding what that was like. So we tried to take it step by step, and over the past 2.5 years now, we've really been able to kind of dial in the process and figure it out. And like you said, unfortunately, we have seen a lot of abandoned projects or, fledgling projects where you have to come in and reinvigorate things, which is always possible, but it can be a challenge too, right? So the key is often good planning and that sort of a thing, right? So when good
planning and good people. I mean, the people are like 100% of it, right? I guess planning 100%. Can be 5%, people can be 95%, but still.
I agree 100% actually. Your experts and your team on the ground are going to make all the difference, right? So the sooner you can get with your experts, the sooner you can talk to professionals on the ground, the better, right? And then once you have your team, then you can identify some land. And once you have your location, then we start planning based on that location and your vision for that location.
Smart,
So it's very similar to other countries when it comes to building, the United States, Canada. So there's a lot of similarities. There's some differences too, but again, planning, a good team on the ground and planning, and then where you're building and what your vision for that is, and of course, budget and all that, and you work all that out. But we're very excited to be here. We started, like I said, about 21, we came here, and I listened to a podcast with my dad. And
where were you at this point?
We were actually driving in the car. I was in the United States, right? So I was home in Florida, and we were driving, listening to the podcast, and we were listening, and I said, Dad, I'm getting involved down here. I bought some land and getting involved. And he said, I want you to go for it. He said, give it all you got and go for it, right? And so, unfortunately, about 2 months after that, he passed away.
Oh, gosh, I'm sorry.
And so I've really committed to giving my all as he asked me to here, you know what I mean? So
amazing.
We're committed here, we're on the ground, and we've learned a lot. We've been on an amazing journey. We're super excited to be here. So many great things are happening in the future. Like we were going to talk about probably, I'm sure, here at some point, some of these new projects and stuff that are going on, but there's just so much happening here, especially the Secret Beach area. Obviously, you handle all of Ambergris Caye.
Yes.
We started specializing in Secret Beach. We do other areas in San Pedro as well, but we're specialists out here. we've gone through the process a number of times, and so we'd like to
Right.
share that information with people as best as we can.
Yep. Well, and I think that's really important to note, right? Because this area here at Secret Beach, it is different than other areas of the island, of course. And so, for example, we are completely off-grid here. And it's not uncommon on the island to be bringing in your own water systems, right? Because public
Correct.
water does not go all across the island.
Correct.
But here at Secret Beach specifically, it is totally off-grid. So you do not have access to public utilities like electricity and water. And so what that means at the end of the day is that you need to incorporate that into your build. Solar, wells, cisterns, however it is that you're going to incorporate it in. So I just wanted to ask you a little bit about prices.
Sure.
Because we get this all the time in the real estate industry, and I give my best guesses based on the past numbers,
Sure.
but you're doing this every single day.
Sure.
So, and I've seen this come up a couple times on YouTube. People are like, all right, you can build a house in Belize on Ambergris Caye at Secret Beach for $60,000. All you need is the lot. You can get the lot for $40,000. You can build your house for $60,000. And then when they start the process, they realize they're like not budgeting the next 50% to actually get the project finished, right? 50%, 60% more.
Correct.
Because they just didn't budget. So what would you say, I'm going to use an example here of a 2-bedroom, 2-bath house, 800 square feet, right?
Okay.
And then that's pretty standard that we see out here in this area. What would you say the cost is, and this is very rough, right?
Yes.
Because we're not going to get into every specific and say, oh, with granite top, with granite countertop,
Sure,
with
sure.
quartz countertop, we're not going to do
What we
this.
say
It's
is
very general.
mid-range
Yeah, and they're
finishes.
average, right?
Yeah.
So with mid-range finishes, and then also we'll talk about what the cost is for solar, the cost for water systems, and then go from there.
Sure.
Because I want you to really like debunk this myth that
Sure.
people have the expectation you can buy a house here for $60,000.
It's true, and I get that question a lot too. You know, what's the price? Because people want to know what they're getting
Sure,
into, and
of
what
course.
their investment has to be
Of course.
in the area. So obviously it varies. Things are dramatic one way or the other based on finishes and so forth, like we talked about. What we find is, if not including the land, a turnkey price. I like to try to quote a turnkey price, right?
So including like air conditioning units, not furniture.
Not furniture,
Not furniture,
not
okay.
furnished, not landscaped, and no fencing.
Okay.
Okay, but other than that, we want a turnkey home, because my biggest advice to people when they start building here in Belize is to ask the question, what's not included?
I love it. I love it because usually people say what's included and then don't think about what's not included. Genius. I love it,
Yes,
Peter.
yeah, do it the other way, right? Ask what's not included, because you might get a quote for a very attractive price,
Yep.
and come to find out there's some things missing. So also too, something to consider is, again, back to advanced planning, but now here in Secret Beach, it may have been different before, but since I've been here, you have to have building plans approved. You don't just buy a
yes.
house prefab
Yes.
on the mainland and just have it dropped off.
Yeah,
There's a
you've always
process.
needed to do that. Was it enforced? Probably not, but there's a lot more enforcement because there's, I think, a lot more construction happening.
Of course. But the point is that advanced planning does need to be done, and
Yep.
you have to have a set of building plans submitted to town council.
Yep.
They have to approve it and give you your building permit. And then you can do your site work and start building your foundation.
Right.
And again, planning, where are your utilities going to be? Where's your water laid out? Are you using rain barrels and rain catch, or are you going to use a cistern? And it all comes down to your vision and your budget. But based on that, we like to quote a turnkey home, all said and done. It's about, on average, $240 to $260 US a square foot. And that's finished home. You can move in with your backpack and hang some clothes in the closet, right?
I love it.
Yeah,
and I
absolutely.
love it. Well, and I'm glad that you said that too, because, you know, and I went through this exercise out in Cayo, bought a Mennonite home, a wooden home, and I was the person who did not ask that question. I wasn't in real estate for a while. I thought like I knew what I was doing, and then I kept getting more bills, because I didn't realize like, oh, I needed to pay $5,000 to connect my home up to electricity because we were so far from the electric line. Like things like this. Obviously, you don't have to worry about that as much at Secret Beach, but what people might not think of is, let's say, solar. Right?
Correct.
Because we are off grid. We're also in a country where there's fairly high customs and duties fees.
That's correct.
Right? So you might be able to get a solar system in the States for, I'm going to say 15,000, just making numbers, right? But here it may be double. So I'm going to use that 800 square foot home as an example again. For it to run properly, right? Let's say there's split ACs in the 2 bedrooms in the living room, and we'll have gas. I would say gas stove, right? We don't need electric for that. That doesn't make sense.
If you're going to have laundry, that's a consideration.
Laundry is good, obviously a refrigerator, a microwave.
Correct.
How much would a solar system like that cost?
Yep. That would, for that size home, we would probably recommend around an 8 kilowatt system.
Okay.
And that's going to give you all the power you need. You're going to plug in all your laptops and devices. You're going to have a router that's streaming your internet. You're going to have your refrigerator, ceiling fans, lights, air conditionings, water pumps, et cetera, all of it.
Okay.
So all of that 8 kilowatt system would probably be anywhere from $24,000 to $30,000 US.
US, yep.
Right, so it's something you also have to consider, unless you're willing to have less, which some people are. You can have less if you're willing to have less AC or less power usage, depending on how you want to live your lifestyle and that sort of thing, right? So it can be tailored, but on average, if you want full power, it's about that $25,000 price point.
Got it, and it's good to know, right? And I think sometimes we don't think about how much electricity we use, especially if you're in the States and electricity there is really quite reasonable compared to a lot of other places in the country, right? Is understand, take a look at your utility bill and see how much energy you're using. And then when you're working with Peter, send that to him, right? Show him, and of course, factor in climate and the different sort of considerations, but be realistic about your usage. And I know that there are some people who come down here and like, oh, we're not going to need all the AC. And then they're a month in and like, oh my God, we didn't realize that the humidity got to 85% over the summer, you know? Yeah. So it does get really hot. Sure. So then let's talk quickly about water systems as well. So cisterns, septic, all of that. How much, let's go back to that 800 square foot house for a moment. How much would you estimate that would cost for installation and whatnot?
It depends on what kind of water system you want. Here at Secret Beach, everything's off-grid, so you're catching rain, or you're having a cistern built, and you can have delivery as well if for some reason there's not enough rains, but there usually is to get it filled up. But so it depends on what system you want. Barrels, rain barrels, they're about $1 a gallon US. Okay. That's the way I like to kind of judge it, all said and done. And then the cistern is anywhere from 2 to 3 times that, depending on the size and capacity, right? So for an 800 square foot home, we would recommend at least 2,400 gallons of barrels, and then maybe double that in a cistern. But it depends on usage, obviously.
Got it, right. And then septic?
Septic is another thing, right? So if anyone's interested, you can go to centralbuildingauthority.org. That's the CBA, that's the governing body here in Belize that oversees all the construction and the laws of construction and so on and so forth. They have a mandate and a pamphlet that they've put out showing the specs of the septic system. And so you have to at least follow this to be approved. And it's what it is, it's just a multi-chambered soak-away system, usually built out of concrete, can be totally subterraneous, or it can be semi-submerged. That's a real term.
Yeah, I mean, we understand it.
And then obviously you'll build it to the capacity of the home, but again, for that example of an 800 square foot house, you're looking at anywhere from $3,500 to $6,500 US.
Got it.
To build that.
Perfect.
So those are kind of your main things, and then you've got your site work. One of the things too is people underestimate how much backfill and clearing they may need here in their lot in Secret Beach.
Yes, you're very right.
Okay, so that happens all the time. People get a little sticker shock regarding how expensive that backfilling is, because you have to bring in a bulldozer. They have to truck in all the backfill and then get your lot leveled and graded. So there's a lot to that as well. And then once that's done, you can actually do that first without your building permit. You don't need a building permit, as far as I understand, to do that. So you can start with that if you have land. Then once you get your building permits submitted, you can start your foundation.
Okay. Got it.
And then and just go from there.
Got it. And that's another cost, right, to factor into is the foundation.
And that's another thing real quick I'll just mention about that is when you're dealing with your home that you're building, right? So let's say it's 800 square feet. Because it's under 1,000 square feet, the CBA says that you can use a technician rather than an architect to have your plans and so forth done. And because the technician doesn't have all the licensing and so forth that an architect would, they have generally less fees.
Right.
Less expensive fees.
Got it.
So you can save some money if your house is under 1,000 square feet. You know, so if you're saying, do we do 1,100 square feet or 950?
Yeah, right. 999.
It depends on what you want to do, obviously.
Is outdoor space included in that 1,000 square feet, like deck space and whatnot?
It often is.
Okay.
Yes, and that's another thing to ask when you're dealing with people. How is it calculated? Because oftentimes the porch and deck areas will be part of that square footage.
Be factored in.
Correct.
Very interesting. So folks, obviously the numbers that we're talking about today, we're recording this, I think it's February 9th-ish, somewhere around there, 2024, but we're just talking very general numbers. If you decide to start working with Peter in a year from now, please don't come back and say, I saw the video where you referenced and you're saying it's $6,500 for, no, just understand
is real, yeah.
inflation's real, prices will go up, but just obviously contact Peter. And obviously everyone is in a really different situation of what it is that they're wanting, right? You may have a specific goal, a specific vision, and so the numbers that we gave are really, really just average, and obviously we recommend reaching out to Peter. So I'm going to ask you, Peter, what is one of the biggest mistakes you've seen people make here when they're going through the building process?
Yeah. One is advanced planning. They don't think it all the way through. I think Stephen Covey said, begin with the end in mind, right? So if we start with what we want it to look like in the end, we can work backwards, and sometimes planning things get skipped. One of the other biggest mistakes that people do is they don't do enough due diligence on their contractor. There are a number of contractors here who may not do what they say they are going to do. The licensing here is different than you may have in other countries. So oftentimes people can show up and say that they do construction work, say that they're a contractor, when in fact they're not that good. At least maybe they do something, but they're not that good. And therefore you're kind of stuck with subpar work just based on, not doing your own due diligence and taking your bartender's advice, at the bar that his cousin's in construction, right? Maybe that's great if it is, and you can get a connection, but check into it, make sure, right? See other projects that they've done. So it's important to do that due diligence.
And it makes sense. And we built, like I mentioned a couple minutes ago, we built this Mennonite home out on the mainland. And one thing that I wish I asked the contractor is, have you done this before? Right, because we wanted to add a cistern to our property, and we're on public water, but the public water in that town actually tends to go out quite a bit. And so I was like, we want to be connected to have our own cistern, have our own water system, so we don't have to depend on the public water. Turns out that our contractor had never done a cistern before. We did not know that. So there ended up being this really huge leak. It was never sealed. So built the concrete frame box, whatever, I don't even know the terms, built this box.
Why is this thing leaking? Where's all our water?
Yeah, well, and that's what happened. And so it ended up going into the caretaker's unit. So the caretaker's unit was adjacent to the concrete block. And because they didn't seal it, it just kept leaking through to the caretaker's unit, and there'd be an inch, 2, 3 inches of water in his unit. And we had initially no idea, and then all the water went out. We took off all the gutters so that none of the water was getting into the cistern, and found out that there was just this huge crack. And then it turns out that he'd never done a cistern before, right? And so for us, like, wow, I wish we asked that question before, is have you done this before? Or, can I talk to people that you've worked with before, right? And that would be a great way for you folks to have an idea of if the person you're working with is experienced and what they're doing.
Yeah, it makes a difference. And one last thing I'll say about that is, regarding the mainland versus Ambergris Caye, right? We're technically on an island.
Yes.
And so one of the challenges we've had has been through materials. And we actually were dealing with someone right now where they said they had experience in Belize, but it was the mainland only. And so when they came here to operate, it was a totally different ballgame. Right? So again, that goes back to your team and your experts who are on the ground, who know the area, who are here looking into everything. And are hopefully being professional with everything. Yeah,
and that's really true too, because I think a lot of times if you are looking at real estate all throughout the country here in Belize, Ambergris really is its own place. We're our own entity here. Things operate differently here than it does in the rest of the country. And also things tend to be more expensive here because, like you said, it's an island. So everything has to be shipped out. I know sometimes people are like, well, I can get a house cheaper than that in the States. Okay, cool, then stay in the States. This is Belize. This is your view. This is what you'll get if you're here at Secret Beach on the water. But with that, Peter, any final words before we hop off here? And then also, how can people get in contact with you?
Sure, of course. I'll start with that. You can look us up at secretbeachhomes.com. We have a website. We have a YouTube channel as well, so you can look us up there. And my closing thoughts are really just repeating what I've already said.
Perfect.
Right?
Yep.
Get your team together. If you haven't been to Belize, obviously visit, probably. You can do stuff sight unseen, but pay us a visit. We'd love to see you.
Business trip,
Exactly. So come down, get your team together, understand what's going on, and then when you have your land, then we work around the location, orientation, all that, and then you're planning on what exactly you want to do and how we're going to execute that.
Perfect. Well, we'll add the link as well below to secretbeachhomes.com. And if you have any questions about building, please do not contact me about it. Please contact Peter, because he has all the details there at his fingertips. And with that, folks, we look forward to seeing you here in Belize. Bye, everyone.